So we're going to have two really short ed puzzles today to make up for the WebEx meeting that didn't work. It'll help you get ready for Thursday's lesson where WebEx will be working, and we will pick up from where we leave off in the ed puzzles. We're going to talk about excerpt 51 or section 51 of Walt Whitman's Song of Myself. Song of Myself was one of Whitman's longest and best known poems. It was published in his book of poetry, Leaves of Grass. Leaves of Grass was something that Whitman would go back to over and over again throughout his life. He published the first part in his mid-30s, and he continued to publish additions to it right up until he died. If you find a copy of Leaves of Grass right now, it's a pretty good-sized book full of poems, but you have to remember that some of the poems were written 40 or 50 years before other poems, because it really did stretch the length of Whitman's life, and he was a fairly prolific poet. We chose number 51 because I think in large part it matches up well with what we talked about with Ralph Waldo Emerson, and that Ralph Waldo Emerson, kind of put out this call. He said, look, we have this American identity, this collective American identity, but we need something that shakes people, something that breaks people out of this mode that they're stuck in, where their lives are stagnating, where the identity of America is stuck in a rut, where we're still, enslaving people and keeping slaves. We're still abusing the Native Americans. We're still not connecting to the land in a responsible way. We're letting our lives get too filled with meaningless things and not spending the time to discover that meaning in life that lets us be individuals or create individual identities as Americans. So he called for this voice, this great American poet, to come and establish this new American literary tradition. And Whitman did that in Leaves of Grass, and in particularly in Song of Myself. And one of the ways that he did that was by focusing on this idea that exists in Song of Myself, section 51. So I'm going to read it to you. We're going to talk about it, and then there's going to be a second short ed puzzle about Walt Whitman for you to watch. There also is going to be an excerpt from Walden that's going to get posted sometime Wednesday. Take a look at it when you can. We'll be talking a little bit about it Thursday and then more on Friday. And WebEx will work, I really hope. So this is section 51 of Walt Whitman's Song of Myself. The past and present wilt. I have filled them, emptied them, and proceed to fill my next fold of the future. Listener up there, what have you to confide to me? Look in my face while I snuff the sidle of evening. Talk honestly, no one else hears you, and I stay only a minute longer. Do I contradict myself? Very well, then I contradict myself. I am large, I contain multitudes. I concentrate towards them that are nigh. I wait on the door slab. Who has done his day's work? Who will soonest be through with his supper? Who wishes to walk with me? Will you speak before I am gone? Will you prove already too late? Whitman is not just writing a poem. He's speaking to the reader. He's speaking to you. Right? He's telling you, hey, you need to take part in the poetry of life. That sounds so cheesy when I say it. But when Walt Whitman says it, it sounds kind of pretty. Hey, join with me. Help me create this poem that is America, this poem that is the identity of the people. And he has these lists. He has these brilliant lists in his poems where he talks about the people that work in the coal mines and the slaves that work in the field and, the soldiers that have to ride the horses and fire the guns and charge at the enemy. He writes about these things which are American. And in this section of Song of Myself, he's inviting you, no matter who you are as an American. It doesn't matter if you're on one side of the political spectrum, if you're on the other side of this political spectrum. It doesn't matter if you're a housewife whose job is to clean and make babies, or if you're a nun, or if you're the President of the United States, or if you're a poet. It's all just as good. You as an individual matter just as much as everyone else. You as an individual connect to the entirety of the universe and the entirety of humankind in the same way that the smartest man or the hardest worker or the laziest bum in the world does. And you deserve to take part in not just the creation of this identity, but the existence of this identity. And when Whitman says something And he's like, oh, do I contradict myself? Very well. Then I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. You don't have to be just one thing or think just one thing, right? You're allowed to hold contradictory ideas because those contradictory ideas can create who you are. I'm going to put up a little bit more of Leaves of Grass, or a link to Leaves of Grass and Song of Myself, in the Google Classroom. You don't have to read it. But if you have any interest in these huge and wandering ideas that Walt Whitman has, check it out. The next Ed puzzle is going to be about Walt Whitman and his life, and there also is going to be an excerpt of Henry David Thoreau's Walden in there for when you get a chance. I'll talk to you soon.